Hey there, you're listening to the EmpowerTech podcast with Iyari Cevallos. This podcast is where we discuss all things tech and explore the growing ways in how we can leverage technology to lead smart, sustainable, and impactful lives. William Gooderson is a high-performance coach and facilitator working across Australia and internationally. Will's experience includes service as a British Army officer, paratrooper and engineer across Europe and the Middle East, leading large multinational teams as a part of special forces and human intelligence communities. Will is also an adjunct lecturer at the University of Tasmania School of Medicine and Nursing and a guest lecturer at Bond University. For over a year now, Will has been the Chief of Staff at Silicon Quantum Computing in Sydney, where they take a materials science approach to delivering the first commercial quantum computer. On this episode, we talk about the basics of quantum and where the industry is today, getting you better equipped to discern media coverage and how this technology is being developed. Let's get started. Will, it's so great to have you here today.
Thanks, Iyari. Great to be here, and thanks for the invite.
Yeah, I'm really keen to get started on our conversation around quantum. Now, I'm going to start with a big question, so take your time. What are the basics we need to know on quantum?
So I am not a technical expert, and I will try to give you the bit of a layman's view. And the way to look at things, so the standard computer, classical computings work on ones and zeros. So it tends to be very linear. You ask a question, it goes through a series of ones and zeros, and it will give you an answer. The view or the big thing about quantum is you have ones and zeros, but you also have what is known as a superposition. So it means that it can be in a different state in between a one and a zero. What that means, in short, is the fact that rather than having to answer questions in a linear fashion, they can go through and answer them all at the same time, because you can have the one and zero in a different position in between, known as a superposition. So it means that you are speeding up how quickly you can answer a question. And I'm going to completely make up stats, but realistically, a very hard question, some of the hardest questions that they ask the supercomputers today could take days, months, even years to answer. With a quantum computer, it would take minutes or even seconds. So that is the view, that by bringing in quantum computing, you will be able to exponentially speed up how quickly we can answer classical computing questions.
Okay, wow. Now, I didn't really think about that ones and zeros kind of concept. Now, I'm assuming then that there are a few different ways to think about quantum. So there might not be just one way of doing that. Is that fair?
Yeah, so there's the view is at the moment we're very much still in this era where they're trying to design quantum computing, and there is a race for the first fully functional quantum computer. And as a result, there's about 6 different ways that people are approaching how quantum computing could actually occur. There's the kind of like the big ticket items, things like superconducting, which is in short, it's where the big players are going, where there's a lot of money, and you end up trying to design something that requires a fridge the size of a football field to cool it down. Because the big problem that they have is basically trying to keep things cool, because at the moment, the computer chips, what they're going into is effectively a refrigerator, which sits at 4 Kelvin. So it is the coldest place in the universe to try and cool it down, because there is so much energy that gets generated. So going back to kind of like one of the big players, the superconducting world. So you've got your Googles out there who are talking about amazing things that they're doing, and they're generating all of these qubits, which is how they basically track how well someone is doing. So they say, we've got 1 million qubits. That's absolutely fantastic, but you're going to need a football field as a fridge to power that technology. And you will need the power of a small city to run that fridge. So
whoa, that's quite large.
Yeah, this is it. So when you start looking at that end of the scale, so that is one of the kind of like the 6 main ones. There's a couple of other ones out there. I'm not an expert on them. The one that I was working with, Silicon Quantum Computing, they use atomic precision for spin qubits. So what they do, technical part aside, basically you have a very small chip, which is about the size of a fingernail. And what you can do is you can actually remove, because they work with atomic precision, so they're removing atoms. And we use silicon phosphorus, so you remove the atoms from silicon and you put a phosphorus atom onto the silicon chip. And in doing so, you are creating a very, very small little computer chip, which is basically the foundations of a quantum computer, or a quantum computing chip. And then the flip side of that, meaning that your fridge is therefore absolutely, on the grand scheme of things, about the size of a door, give or take, slightly bigger. As a cylindrical door. So that kind of like gives you
very different,
without any of the technicals. And if anyone is technical, they'll just be like, there's far more detail. Yes, there is. I won't even try and hazard a guess.
Keeping it simple is great for us today, Will. Yes. So thank you. So this sounds very scientific. Like you're starting to get into some pretty technical scientific terms there. But I just want to go back to the first one that you described. So the first of the 6 different methods that are being attempting to be proven can work, I guess, is the stage that they're at, as you described before. So would it be fair then that because Google have quite a lot of funds to spend, and they're finding that first method is I guess something that there's been more research done on, or we know more about? Is that why they're chasing that one?
It's a very interesting and complicated answer, unfortunately, because what you will find is, and this was something that I noticed going into the industry as a non-technical person. It's great because you need to understand it from layman's terms. And one of the things that you do is, as you read through the papers, you realize that actually everyone is spinning a different story. So you will have those who are of the line of thought that superconducting is the way to go. So there'll be a load of research, and then it will get funded through various powerhouses. And then there will be an affiliation with some of the big brands and some of the big names. You've got, just from a funding perspective, like venture capitals like BlackRock, who are throwing billions at this. So they're obviously wanting to see it succeed. So then you'll get them aligning with various research bodies and parties, and you will have all of the kind of like superconducting fan people in one group. And what they'll be doing is they'll be releasing all of these papers, and there's lots of them. But then what happens is when they go for a peer review, then all of the kind of like non-superconducting people will be looking and seeing if there's kind of like bits and pieces that they can take into their own side of things from a physical or from a scientific perspective. But actually the process itself is so complicated that people are always arguing whether or not it isn't worthwhile.
Okay.
So yeah, it is very much hey, there's lots of people doing this, so therefore you get a lot of big money going on over here. At the other end of the scale, when from a size point of view, the world that we were working on, there's still a lot of people who think about spin qubits, which is where we work, and you've got a number of companies who are in that space. But the reality is it's not kind of like as heavily funded, and it's not as heavily fanfared, because one of the things that I identified prior when I was working in cyber is very hard to get funding for because you can't see it and touch it. So if you think cyber defense, it's a bit wishy-washy and up in the air. Whereas if you think of submarine, everyone can see that and they'll throw money at it. So that's where you get billions in funding for kind of like hardware, but you don't necessarily see it from the software. It's the same with quantum, where people don't really understand it. So what happens is if you've got the superconductors at the big end of the scale going, hey, we've got lots and lots of qubits, everyone's just like, they must be doing really, really well because they've got loads of qubits. Whereas we're at the other end going, we've only got a few qubits, but they're a much higher quality. And what you end up with, hey, we need lots and lots of qubits, but they need to be really, really high quality. We are currently in a stage where we've got very few qubits, but a very high quality. So now what we've got to do is try and make them grow. These guys have got to now try and improve the fidelity, which means they've got to make them better quality, and stabilize them, which is really, really hard. So that's where it becomes this, is it better to start and go quality over quantity?
Okay.
Our line of thought is yes. And the reality being that once you've got high quality, then it's just a case of scale. Our company was quite unique because we manufacture in-house. So we have the fabrication teams and we have the foundries in-house for the small scale stuff, and which makes it very, very easy. And so the entire company can do the whole stage from zero to hero. Whereas the Googles of this world, they're having to bring in various partners to improve aspects, which makes it very hard to then control the process. Does that make sense? I get that does make sense. Jumping all over the place.
Yeah, no, this is great. So the Googles of this world, they've gotten to the point where they need to start thinking about how to not need so much refrigeration and how to get more out of what they've created.
Yeah. So it's, and again, non-scientifically, yes, I'm going to say that. It is all about, and you'll see, if you ever read in the papers, everyone's kind of like, we are at 99.7% fidelity. And everyone's like, ooh, the 0.3% is the brutal, going to take 10 years to get there.
Okay. Okay.
And I mean, the reality, so within the tech space, and I'm assuming it's across industry, but you have tech readiness levels, which go from 1 to 9. 9 means, bang, we're succeeding. This is amazing. It's in the public domain, whatever. We are sitting at about a 4 or 5, and that's where the entire industry is. Okay. Different lines of thought as to how quickly you're going to get to the perfect quantum computer. I mean, we had clients and we had quantum machine learning working out in industry, but it's obviously very much kind of like it's in your very early stages. Very expensive because it is you're building bespoke, with the view being that obviously the better you get, the cheaper it will become. And there's lines of thought saying, all right, okay, in the next 10 years, we will have the quantum era kicking off. There's also lines of thought, so actually we could get there in the next 5 years. I think what was very interesting when I came into the role, I was watching podcasts from 10 years beforehand. So Michelle Simmons, who was our CEO, is very much a public figure. She'd given lots of talks, and it was interesting then coming in and seeing how some of the stuff she was predicting was going to take 20 years was already in, and other stuff which wasn't going to take very long was dragging. So it is an industry where it was explained to me by one of the scientists when I came in, if you don't have an understanding of physics, you're instantly in a better place than most of the people here, because you have to unlearn a lot of kind of like the common laws that you get taught for quantum to work effectively and for you to understand it.
Okay. So I guess what I'm hearing you say in the tail end of your explanation there is that quantum is a new frontier in terms of the way that we think about the science around it. It's actually something that we're discovering as we go. Is that fair?
Very much so. And what you'll find is that there will be there's a lot of papers that do come out, and they talk about, and the reality is in the industry, they're big name papers that are coming out. They are identifying X is Y or whatever, and all these little bits and pieces where they just things are brand new because you are at the forefront. One of the big things that I would find when I was working with the team, and you're going in and they've spent 2 years and they've kind of like had a major breakthrough, which to the untrained eye, when I'm looking on the screen of kind of like the photos, I'm just like, I can't see what's different here. And they're just like, this is amazing. But you are at the cutting edge. And in a world where a lot of things have been discovered and whatever, it's quite fascinating. I mean, I'm going to go on a slight tangent very quickly, but it's interesting for me. When I was getting it explained to me, there's different rules about quantum theory, and one of them is the multiverse theory. Now, there is a line of thought that there'll be some scientists like poo-poo, but there's others who are just like, the reason why we are able to answer a question so quickly using quantum is because they are going into multiple universes to get answers. So you're running it in another universe and then bringing it back again. Now, again, I probably butchered the scientific understanding of it. But the link into that is that there is a line of thought that within our brains, we have an element of a quantum computer that is running because of how our neural pathways work. And as part of that, the view is that things like deja vu are when we are stepping into these other universes. Now, the caveat is I'm a comic book fan, so I love the concept of that. But it was quite an interesting one just to talk through and say, right this minute, there's nothing to prove or disprove that. And I've got into reading Stephen Hawking's and bits and pieces. And again, from a non-scientific view, I think the big thing is we don't know. So that's what kind of makes it exciting, which is why there are some really big breakthroughs. And it's an interesting space to watch. Right this minute, AI, everyone's like, ooh, this is amazing. The reality being, AI takes us as a civilization up a step. Quantum will put us into a whole new revolution, a whole new era. So they've talked about the quantum era. And if it comes to fruition, because there's a chance it may not, but the view is if it does, then I think it will be a game changer.
Wow. Yes, you've just made my brain go in all sorts of directions.
That's the fun part, right? And you could watch this podcast in 5 years' time, just like, what an idiot. What on earth is he going on about? But who knows at the moment? It's still on the cards.
We'll see. So I want to spend a moment on careers today in this space, because it does sound a little bit like it could be a whole bunch of different things for people. So for anyone that is interested in getting into this space, whether it be they're coming, they're thinking about it because they're about to go to uni as young as that, or they've already started in industry and maybe want to shift to that space. What are you actually doing in these teams? Like, what can you expect out of a career today?
Well, it's and I mean, there's multiple different areas in terms of what the profession could look like. What I'll do is I'll speak to what I was seeing. So within UNSW, we've got Silicon Quantum Computing, which was a spin out from the university. And because they're an in-house and they do everything, what you've got is you have got the quantum scientists. So you've got kind of like your quantum engineers and your fabricators, and they're the individuals who are designing devices and they are trialing them and they are testing theories. As part of that, you've got a whole theory team, and they will support kind of like the theory. So they're going through the papers, they're reading what could work, what might not work, what are some of the things that we need to think about. So they would be working with the quantum engineers. You've then got the people who are actually building the devices as part of the foundry team. So you've got the fabrication teams, and you've got people who basically get dressed up in the SOCO suits, so the white suits, and they are in the cleaning rooms and they're designing these devices, which are then getting tested in part of the machine. So you've got that side of things. So there's an entire kind of like fabrication world. Plus you've got the hardware and the software engineers. And so they are people who effectively are kind of like classical computer individuals who are then bringing in the quantum mindset and saying, right, okay, how would this work with a normal computer? So how are we going to put the chips into the computer, and how do you then get the software to read it? So you've then got that side.
Kind of like integration of the different things.
So you've got, there were people who were joining who were coming from finance. So they've been in banking finance. And you think to yourself, right, okay, within the world of finance, if you can get your data to run 2 seconds quicker, that could be worth $1 trillion in terms of all of the algorithms that are running in all of these. So it's small things like that where you get people who are stepping across. So we have had people who, yes, they've studied quantum physics at university, and there's a lot more courses now than there were 3 years ago. Europe is very much, I want to say leading the way. I could be wrong, but I think that was one of the things. There is a lot more courses coming online there because there's been a fairly big investment in Europe in that space. America is an unknown, obviously, with Trump and all that roller coaster. So I won't try to understand that. Yes, they've got some really good, capable individuals, and a lot of money coming out of the US from that space. And I'm sure that education-wise, there's some very capable spaces, but it's not one that I know well. Australia does have a number of those courses and more of them coming online. And there's probably 5 or 6 big companies within Australia. If we've got time, I can talk about the politics of the $1 billion that went to an external company, but we can come back to that depending on how you're looking. But there is lots of jobs that are available. And it's not just in quantum. So there is different angles. There's the theoretical side. There is the hardware and the software side, which obviously makes for an exciting time.
Okay, so lots of opportunities there and a variety of different types of roles, skill sets and experience. So thank you for talking through that black box.
Trying to.
Yes. Will, I do want to go back to we'll talk about what's happening in Australia, but just for the folks that don't really know what to do with what they hear on the media, how should we be, receiving news about quantum at the moment? Like, what are the things that we should be demystifying for listeners?
And I think this is probably a broader thing in general. One of the the double-edged sword of AI is it can be a really useful tool to augment your thinking, but if you rely on it too heavily, you will go down a specific rabbit hole based upon what the algorithm is saying in the background. And so I think with any of the news that is coming out, it's that ability to critically think outside of the box. Cool, this is useful information, but what does it genuinely mean? I think at the moment, one of the big things that is that we should be appreciating is the fact that no one really knows what's going on. It's not a kind of like, hey, this is an enormous leap forward that's going to impact me today. Unless you are somebody who is very much in the field from kind of like the venture funding side of things or the finance or anything like that, you will have your own internal stuff. So the BCGs of this world, the McKinseys of this world, they're putting out some very good, simple overviews of what is happening. And it's more about where the money is being spent, what kind of timeframes we're looking for. And they don't go into the detail of the science because I think the science is so controversial at the moment with lots of different views and opinions. And like anything, if you look at how kind of like AI sprung onto the scene, I think that quantum will be demystified as we get closer to the end. My big piece would be, it's trying to establish how you can control what is going on in that space. I think AI has demonstrated that they can't regulate it. It's out the box now and it's all over the place. Now would be the time to think about how we regulate this space. But I don't think anyone has the bandwidth for that. Interestingly, chatting to companies, telcos who work within kind of like the communication and cryptography side of life, they are already starting to work out how you kind of like basically build cryptography to prevent quantum hacking, because one of the big things is if you've got a really tight crypto system right this minute, which can't be broken by a classical computer, quantum could break it in minutes potentially.
Yeah, wow.
So
with every great advance,
exactly, and that's where it's at the moment the stuff that you will see that is coming out. I think unless you go looking, you're not going to see an enormous amount from a technical side of view. It will be more the money and the politics. Where are we spending the money? Who's winning the race?
And as you said before, even if we're seeing that a lot of money is being spent in the space that Google's playing in, for example, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily advancing any quicker than some of the other players.
Yeah. And that's, and I think it's, and I will touch on, so the Psi Quantum deal that came through. So this was a couple of years ago. Basically, the Australian government decided that they were going to invest $1 billion in quantum. So it's far more political, but from a simple perspective, that's what they were going to do. So they chatted to a number of companies. And like I said, there's 5 or 6 major companies in Australia. And my view, rather than deciding to split the money 5, 6 ways and saying, right, okay, all of you have got some skills and bits and pieces, we're going to give you some money to try and develop to the next level. They decided that they were going to put all their eggs in one basket and invest $1 billion in a company from overseas. Now, the view was that it was made in Australia because the founders were from Australia, and they said that they had to go to Silicon Valley to actually get taken seriously and all these fun things. But the challenge is you're putting money overseas, and they said, yes, we're going to build in Queensland, and there is going to be a facility built near the airport and all these great things. I mean, as somebody who works in consulting and has seen multiple industries, I know how much this money can sound great. But then actually, what does it mean on the ground? And at the same time, the same company also got $500 million to build in Chicago. So there's
already a conflict there.
And this is it. And I'm sure that they will tell us how amazing it's going to be, and it's going to be fantastic. And I mean, the reality—
That's a founder's job.
This is it. It is one of those where if you put the politics aside, it's just saying, right, okay, if you're throwing $1 billion into one egg, and that one egg actually hasn't demonstrated anything yet, which is the other part. You had the opportunity to basically invest in 4 different types of quantum technology, or throw $1 billion into one technology.
Okay.
And that's where it's a
bigger gamble, right?
It is. It is a bigger gamble. And if we are trying to make Australia somewhere which can compete on the world stage, which we have the technology and we've definitely got the brains to be a front runner, you'd hope that there would be more investment in that space. But that's politics aside, right?
Yes.
I have no skin in the game these days.
Fair enough. Well, look, it's been great talking to you, but before we close out, we do like to give our listeners some top tips to empower themselves in this space. And so today it's about quantum. What would you suggest our listeners do to either get more informed or understand quantum a bit better? I know you and I have talked about a particular book. I think it was Quantum for Babies.
Yes.
So which you recommended. So what would be your top tips for people?
I think, so I touched on it earlier. So your BCGs, your McKinseys, some of the big thinking houses do put out kind of like quarterly reports or annual reports on quantum. And they're a really good overview. They're 5-6 pages. Some of the bigger ones are maybe 10 or 20. But it's all about kind of like touching the big ticket items. Okay, where is money being spent? Where are we sitting at the moment? What could the benefits be? I mean, I haven't talked about the benefits, but there's lots of potential exciting benefits that could come in multiple sections. So it's good to get that insight. I mean, if you on LinkedIn, if you're a big follower of that, there's always kind of like your quantum bits and pieces you can sign up to. So Tech Council Australia, they cover all tech within Australia, but they do have quantum. That is one that comes through. There is the Australian Quantum Association, who have they have kind of like the main players attend that, and I used to be a member. And you catch up fortnightly, quarterly, and there was a lot of stuff that would get discussed on that. I don't think you're necessarily going to learn huge amounts from it, but it does just give you a bit of an insight. And as things start to ramp up over the next couple of years, there's definitely a lot going on. Quantum for Babies gives you a very brief overview, and I can give you a couple of other titles for the chat or to share, etc.
Yeah, we can add those to the show notes. Yes.
Yeah, that's it. And I think it's just being open to it. It's the red car mindset. If you go looking for a red car, you'll start seeing them. If you start thinking about quantum, you will find that it does trickle through. It's in the AFR every now and again. There are some big names in the industry. So if you do want to follow kind of like the big names, you've got Google, unsurprisingly, and IBM are kind of like two expensive names. But then you've got the IonQs of this world. SQC was the space that I was in. PsiQuantum and the individuals who've got all this money over in the States. So there's a variety of different areas, and they've all got different strengths and weaknesses. So I think it is good just to broaden your horizons and not think, right, when people talk about quantum, there is only one solution. Right this minute, there's a lot. So just keeping that open mind. And
again, although there are 6 different theories, some will be proven, and I'm assuming some might not, right?
Yes.
So it's still at that frontier stage. So great to understand that and unpack that with you. Will, thank you so much for coming in and talking to us about this exciting topic.
Well, thank you for your time. And hopefully, for those who are scientifically minded, I appreciate I will butchered some of it. For those who aren't, hopefully it wasn't too technical and it was a useful little overview.
Yeah. Look, if you are scientific and you want to come on the show and add to Will's explanations, we are happy to have you. Thank you, Will, for coming along.
Pleasure. Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks for listening today. Do keep in mind that this is a podcast for informational purposes, and all we're really doing is sharing our opinions on things that matter to us. With that being said, if you liked what you heard and want to continue supporting us, share this podcast with your network to help us grow and bring on even more guests. Until next time, this is Iyari from EmpowerTech, signing off.